Have you ever wondered why the inner critic talk to us like that? So this voice we hear sometimes in our thinking, mixed with our thinking, judging and criticizing everything we do, we want to do, especially if we try to implement change or if we start to fantasize about change, there is a lot of attack. You're not good enough. What do you think you're doing? Why? Why does this inner critic voice talks to us like that? That's what I want to talk to you today, because I notice that really often we just notice there are these negative thinking, these negative ideas that really put us down really often, that's also hurt emotionally. And the reaction is simply, oh, the inner critic is really strong about this. I just don't want to hear him. I just want to find a way to, dump the noise, separate myself from the inner critic. In my experience, the best way to transform this relationship is really by going a bit deeper, understanding a bit better what's going on, so that you know who you are dealing with. And in doing that, you know also what's the best way to deal with it. So next to separating yourself from the inner critic. So making the step from I think I'm not good enough to my inner critic think I'm not good enough for that specific project, or I will never manage to achieve that, to my inner critic does not believe I can achieve that. And I made another video about that I will link at the end. What I would like to do today is to look at who is the inner critic. Why does the inner critic talk to us like that? And discovering who the inner critic actually is, which kind of figure, which kind of role it has, it's really revealing of why it does what it does, it says what it says. So the first thing I would like to ask is, have you ever noticed that your inner critic talks like someone you know? That is a known voice. It's a known way of expressing itself. There may be a sentence construction that you recognize someone in your life uses or used to use, certain words, certain ways, certain specific subject that are particularly sensitive. Even the voice, you may even hear the voice of your inner critic in your thinking. And majority of the time, the person in our life, our inner critic seems to have taken inspiration from, is one of our parents. I want to make really clear that this is not, even if you have good parents, your inner critic will probably inspire itself from one of your parents. And good parents, bad parents, who knows? There is a lot to be said about parents, about what is the healthiest way for you to relate to parents. I will leave that for a potential future video if there is interest about it. So this is absolutely not about parent shaming. What this information reveals is that the inner critic talks to us like a parent, like an overly anxious, overly concerned parent that doesn't realize we are not little and defenseless little thing, but we are adult, capable of taking decision with skills, with an education, with experience. That's for sure. But it's a parental energy. And behind the really harsh words and opinion that the inner critic expresses, there is a desire, a desperate desire to protect us, to shelter us, to prevent any kind of humiliation, failure, or bad things happening to us. Yes, it doesn't work. Yes, we need to change the relationship. However, realizing that the intention are actually protective of us can shed a new light on who the inner critic is and how we want to look at him or her or it. I prefer often to refer to the inner critic as it, also to keep a bit of a distance. So just take a moment to soften your look towards the inner critic if you can, and realize that there is a good intention behind, as really often is the case. It's like you may have one of those person in your life that is always trying to help you, but never ask what you actually need. It's just deciding, oh, I see you need that, I'm gonna do it for you. That's a bit how the inner critic works. And this is a first step. So you realize it's like a parental energy. And the second most really important information in the direction of changing the relationship is that actually, really often, the inner critic talk to us, but is actually protecting the inner child. The inner child is that part of us that is still really young, feels and expresses all of our emotion. Not everybody really sees it in the same way. You could see all our emotional life, all our magical intuitive life as some kind of younger childlike energy. But also the negative emotion, the fears, the sadness, the anger, is somehow of the inner child. When we do not engage with our inner child, when we do not have an healthy, active, attentive relationship with our inner child, so with all our emotional life, with all our less rational, more sensory, intuitive, magical side, then this inner child feels a bit left alone, goes around in our inner world and could also interfere with our life. And so when the inner child is wandering in our inner world without us really being actively engaged with it, then the inner critic steps in to protect it. And of course, when we have an inner child that walks around without supervision, we are emotionally, especially, much more vulnerable. We can get offended. We can get negatively impacted by things going wrong much more easily. And the inner critic is trying to prevent that. The inner child can be something a bit complex to understand how it works, but that's something I will treat maybe in another video. What is important to realize is that we have an opportunity to change the relationship with the inner critic by becoming more aware, more attentive of our emotional life, our inner child. The more we are managing and handling and being able to hold and move through our emotion, the more the inner critic doesn't really have reason to concern. So we can start a conversation about how to change the relationship. So I hope this was useful. Let me know if there are comment questions about this, and I'll see you in the next video.